day will come when we will name names other than Sean Combs, and there's a lot of names. It's a long list already. And of course, I already know who some of these individuals are, but because of the nature of this case, we're going to make damn sure that we're right before we do that.
Hollywood's glamorous mask just cracked wide open. In a shocking twist, arrest warrants were just issued for some of the biggest names in entertainment, all tied to the scandals surrounding music mogul Diddy. These celebrities, once seen as untouchable, are now scrambling as accusations of wild, secretive parties and years of silence start to unravel their carefully crafted images. With big players now facing legal action, could this be the beginning of a stunning downfall for Hollywood's elite? But before we get into the video, why don't you take a second and subscribe to our channel?
Yep. Diddy and Taylor right here. One first right there. One shot. To this camera. To this. Is it here, guys?
Hollywood has always had this mystique, this air of unattainable glamour and prestige. It's the land of red carpets, award shows, and exclusive parties that only a select few get invited to. For most of us, Hollywood's glittering world seems larger than life, a place where every night is filled with luxury, powerful connections, and over-the-top celebrations. But as we're now finding out, some of that glitz might be hiding a much darker reality, especially when it comes to Diddy's infamous gatherings. Turns out, behind that glamorous facade, some troubling things were going on. The allure of Hollywood's party scene was just that, an illusion, a sparkling surface hiding some messy truths underneath. Allegations now suggest that some of these gatherings weren't just about harmless fun. Instead, they allegedly involved actions that crossed moral and even legal lines. Reports talk about a scene where the rules were bent, where things we'd usually consider as crossing the line were accepted, even expected, under the guise of Hollywood freedom and rebellion. And here's the kicker. A lot of people who were there, the ones who witnessed this firsthand, chose to look the other way.
It's all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. All lies will be exposed. So if you and a man was in a corner doing something you wasn't supposed to be doing,
you will tell it.
I know so many things I shouldn't know. When I walk in a room, heads go down.
In Hollywood, there's this unspoken rule, don't rock the boat. Top names in the industry who attended these events are now being criticized, not just for what they might have done, but for what they didn't do. They saw things, troubling things by the sound of it, but said nothing. They just stood by, letting it happen. In some cases, maybe they even joined in. That's what makes this so shocking. It wasn't just one person's mistake. We're talking about a whole culture of silence, where people would rather stay quiet and protect their image than intervene.
Yeah, you understand?
Right.
And we here together, and we gonna keep staying together. We getting tighter. You know what I'm saying? And united we stand, and ain't nothing else to us.
Black excellence. Right here.
It's almost like everyone involved had something to gain by keeping things quiet. Powerful people, from celebrities to hotel managers to corporate giants, had a stake in maintaining the illusion. They wanted to keep the profits rolling, keep the glamour intact, and keep their images squeaky clean. And so, nobody spoke up, nobody intervened, and nobody questioned it. It's only now, with these arrest warrants and high-profile investigations, that we're beginning to see just how deep this culture of silence went. Tony Busby is a name that's becoming well-known for anyone following this scandal. He's not just any lawyer, he's got a reputation for taking on high-profile cases and fighting tooth and nail for justice, no matter who he's up against. In this case, Busby isn't just targeting Diddy. He's going after a whole network of people and institutions he believes enabled, ignored, or even profited from the alleged misconduct at Diddy's parties. His goal is clear: to expose what he sees as a toxic culture in Hollywood, one where the powerful get away with far too much because nobody dares to hold them accountable.
A lot of people allowed it to go on, said nothing, didn't intervene, maybe benefited from it, profited from it. All of these individuals and entities, in my view, have exposed.
Busby is painting a picture of a web of enablers, and it's a tangled one. It's not just the celebrities who attended these parties and looked the other way. Hotels that hosted these events, banks that handled the money, and even big-name corporations are all under the spotlight. He argues that these companies turned a blind eye to what was happening, all because it was profitable. The idea is that for years, this anything-goes mindset allowed misconduct to flourish because everyone involved benefited in some way, whether through business connections, fame, or cold, hard cash. By going after these institutions, Busby isn't just aiming for a legal win, he's sending a message that nobody should be above the law, no matter how powerful they are.
When you talk about the ages of the victims when the conduct occurred, it's shocking. Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one.
This legal strategy is massive in scope and honestly pretty bold. Busby isn't just aiming to hold a handful of people accountable, he's trying to dismantle what he sees as a whole system of privilege and impunity in Hollywood. He's digging deep, looking into records, transactions, and even surveillance to build a case that touches multiple levels of influence. By broadening the case this way, he's essentially creating a ripple effect. The idea is to make everyone connected to this scandal nervous because if Busby succeeds, it won't just be Diddy facing consequences. It could be dozens of people, companies, and powerful entities who've long thrived in this protected world.
We know that many of these individuals were paid cash. We know that many of these individuals involved, whether they were the ones being assaulted and abused or they're witnessing other people being assaulted and abused and then paid and threatened and told to leave. Typically paid 10 grand in cash and told to leave. And then threatened as they were leaving. So in addition to Sean Combs, you should know the defendants in these cases we're going to file will include anyone, of course, who engaged in the assault or exploitation, anyone who participated in such in any way, anyone who encouraged or facilitated this conduct, anyone who was in the room and watched it happen but made no effort to stop it, any venue or venue owner who was aware.
Busby's approach is making waves because it's so different from what we usually see in celebrity scandals. Typically, cases like these focus on a single person or small group, but Busby's mission seems much bigger. He's determined to expose what he sees as a culture of silence in Hollywood, where people prefer to turn the other way instead of speaking up. His message to the public is clear. This is a deep-rooted problem, not just a one-off incident. By bringing these institutions into the mix, he's essentially trying to force Hollywood to confront its own culture, which, he argues, has enabled the worst kinds of behavior to thrive under the radar.
You said the police were working with you on this case. You wanted to get the report. We talked about this. You said things were going smoothly, but now it's not. So when did that change?
Last night, actually, I got an email from them, the county, not the city police.
Diddy's defense team, led by high-profile lawyer Mark Agnifilo, is pulling out all the stops to cast this case as more of a smear campaign than an actual criminal matter. They're not only fighting the charges, but also the way the story is being told in the media. Agnifilo's strategy is clear. He's framing this as an attempt by the prosecution to target a high-profile figure for the sake of making headlines, rather than pursuing real justice. The message they're pushing is that Diddy is a victim of an exaggerated vendetta, caught in the crossfire of a case that's being blown out of proportion. The defense is leaning heavily into the argument that while Diddy's behavior might not fit everyone's idea of acceptable, it doesn't rise to the level of criminality. They admit that his lifestyle and choices might be unusual, even morally questionable by some standards. But they argue that nothing he's accused of actually breaks the law. Agnifilo and his team are working hard to distinguish between what might seem unsavory and what is legally punishable. It's a tactic that seeks to make people see Diddy's actions as more of a lifestyle choice, rather than anything malicious or illegal. A big part of their approach also focuses on shifting public opinion. The defense team is actively framing Diddy as someone who is being unfairly targeted by an overzealous media frenzy. They're painting a picture of him as a man whose private life is being exploited and sensationalized for the sake of public consumption. By positioning Diddy as a target of the media's appetite for celebrity scandals, the defense hopes to win over public sympathy. They want people to see Diddy not as a criminal, but as a person facing intense scrutiny and judgment just because he's famous. The narrative they're pushing is that Diddy's life is under a microscope, and that he's being forced to defend himself against a world eager to bring down another star.
One very important thing, that the prosecutors are seizing on something that happened 8 years ago. You know, this video that we've all seen, and it's a bad video for Mr. Combs, and he said so himself when he gave his apology. This is 8 years ago, and the prosecutors are talking about him bribing a hotel security worker. There was no criminal investigation. This was just a matter of personal embarrassment because he and the person in the video were in the midst of a 10-year relationship that was difficult at times, that was toxic at times, but it was mutually so. And this whole notion that Mr. Combs is forcing drugs on someone is just nonsensical, and it's going to prove to not be true.
The defense team is also tapping into a larger conversation about fame and fairness, suggesting that celebrities often face harsher judgment and that Diddy is a symbol for anyone who's been unfairly targeted just because of their success. It's a strategic move to connect with fans and supporters who might relate to the idea of being misjudged or singled out. Agnifilo and his team are well aware that public perception can impact a case, especially when it involves a celebrity of Diddy's stature. By turning the spotlight onto the media's role, they're hoping to make people question the motives behind this case and reconsider Diddy's role in it. In Hollywood, connections are everything. For years, Diddy was one of the industry's most connected figures, moving in circles that included not just musicians and actors, but also top executives, fashion icons, and even political power players. Being part of Diddy's inner circle meant access to the best parties, opportunities, and deals. But with this scandal exploding, those connections are starting to look more like liabilities than assets, and many of his former allies are scrambling to distance themselves from him as quickly as possible. The fallout from this scandal is pulling in more high-profile names every day. Rumors are swirling about musicians, actors, and executives who once attended Diddy's infamous parties or were close associates. As the investigation widens, these big names are feeling the heat, worried about how their own reputations might suffer by association. Nobody wants to be linked to a scandal of this scale, especially one that involves such serious allegations. So they're going silent, deleting old social media posts, and in some cases, issuing carefully crafted statements to minimize any association with Diddy. It's almost like a game of hide and seek, with some celebrities doing everything they can to erase any trace of their connection to him. They know how quickly public opinion can turn, and for Hollywood's elite, their brand and public image are worth everything. A single misstep, a photo in the wrong place at the wrong time, or a past endorsement of Diddy could be enough to put their careers at risk. For some, this distancing is a matter of pure self-preservation, an attempt to keep their names clear as the scandal unfolds. For years, Hollywood's elite circles have been the subject of countless conspiracy theories. But things got even more intense with Diddy's scandal now drawing comparisons to the infamous Jeffrey Epstein case. The idea of powerful people in entertainment and business moving in hidden networks, all while covering up shady behaviors, has fascinated the public for a long time. And with the recent allegations against Diddy, some are starting to question if he might have been involved in a world as secretive and dark as Epstein's. But hey, let's pause for a second so you can quickly subscribe to our channel and don't forget to comment your thoughts so far. Epstein, as we know, operated in circles filled with influential names, politicians, business magnates, and celebrities. He built a web of connections that allowed him to stay protected for years, even while doing things that were morally and legally horrific. The fact that he moved through society's upper echelons undetected has made people wonder how many others could be doing the same. With Diddy now under intense scrutiny, people are asking if his story might reveal similar networks and if others in the entertainment world might be covering up for him. Joe Rogan and others have added fuel to the fire by questioning why we still haven't seen a complete list of Epstein's associates while Diddy's connections are suddenly front and center. Rogan and other public figures have pointed out that Epstein's case seemed to vanish from the spotlight too quickly, especially considering the high-profile individuals linked to him. By contrast, the Diddy case has been splashed across headlines everywhere. People are left wondering if there's a deliberate effort to protect some names while publicly exposing others. This is where the public's curiosity comes in. The moment Diddy's name was linked to these allegations, conspiracy theories began to multiply, especially among people who already felt suspicious of Hollywood's closed circles. To them, the scandal isn't just about one man, it's about an entire system that seems to let the rich and powerful act without consequences. It's almost as if Diddy's case has become a lightning rod for all the frustration and skepticism that people have toward Hollywood and the elite in general. Financial institutions, luxury hotels, and even pharmaceutical companies are now facing serious questions about their role in supporting or even enabling the alleged misconduct. It's one thing to look at Diddy and his high-profile friends, but this goes way beyond that. The investigation is uncovering what could be a complicated network of corporate involvement, raising questions about how much these institutions knew and whether they turned a blind eye because there was money to be made. Banks are a big part of this picture. Handling large sums of money for a celebrity is normal enough, but when those funds are being funneled toward events that allegedly involve illegal activities, the banks become part of the story. Reports suggest that some banks may have processed suspicious transactions connected to Diddy's lavish parties without raising any red flags. Typically, banks are required to monitor and report any unusual or suspicious activity. But in Diddy's case, it seems that some transactions went unchecked. It raises the question, did these financial institutions ignore possible red flags because they didn't want to lose a valuable client, or were they genuinely unaware? Either way, the implication is troubling. Luxury hotels are facing similar scrutiny. These gatherings weren't taking place in some hidden basement. They were happening at high-end hotels known for their exclusivity and service. These hotels pride themselves on providing privacy and discretion, which is part of their appeal to high-profile clients. But in this case, that discretion may have crossed into dangerous territory. Rumors are circulating that some hotels either ignored or even enabled questionable behavior to keep Diddy's business. After all, a high-profile guest like Diddy brings in not just direct revenue, but also attracts other celebrities and wealthy clientele, which can be incredibly profitable. For these hotels, it seems the reputation and profit from hosting such gatherings may have outweighed any concerns about what was going on behind closed doors. Perhaps most shocking are the allegations involving pharmaceutical companies. Reports suggest that some substances found at these parties weren't just the usual party drugs. They were powerful medications that typically require a prescription and careful control. This has led investigators to suspect that there might be a supply chain involving pharmaceutical companies, or at least those with access to these drugs. If this turns out to be true, it would mean that illegal substances were not only readily available, but possibly provided with corporate involvement. That paints a disturbing picture of complicity, where corporations that are supposed to uphold the law may have been contributing to a dangerous culture simply to keep influential clients happy. Diddy's flavor camp has come under fresh scrutiny as more details emerge about what these so-called mentorship experiences entailed. On the surface, Flavor Camp sounds like an opportunity for young, rising stars to learn from a major industry mogul, to be introduced to the glamorous side of Hollywood, and to gain valuable guidance for their careers. But as it turns out, Flavor Camp may have been less about mentorship and more about introducing these young talents to a lifestyle that was anything but ordinary and not suited for their age. Usher and Justin Bieber are two of the biggest names linked to these Flavor Camp experiences. Usher, who was brought under Diddy's wing at a young age, lived with Diddy for a time and was introduced to his extravagant, party-driven lifestyle. In interviews years later, Usher has spoken about that period with a mix of nostalgia and unease, hinting that he was exposed to things he hadn't anticipated and perhaps wasn't ready for. He described seeing wild parties, late nights, and a whole world that was new to him. The fact that he was so young when he went through this has raised eyebrows. People are questioning whether a teenager should have been put in that kind of environment, even if it was meant to build character or offer insight into the industry. Justin Bieber's story is similar. He looked up to Usher, and early in his career, he was also introduced to Diddy's world. Bieber himself has hinted that the lifestyle he encountered was intense, a mix of high-energy parties and a level of fame that put a lot of pressure on him. As he grew older, Bieber opened up about the struggles he faced as a young star trying to navigate a world filled with intense expectations and influences. While it's hard to say exactly how much his time with Diddy impacted him, many fans wonder if this early exposure played a role in the challenges he later faced in his career. The controversy here lies in the very nature of mentorship. Did Diddy intend to help these young stars, or was he exposing them to a lifestyle they weren't ready for? Some see Flavor Camp as a form of grooming, where young talents were brought into Diddy's orbit and introduced to the Hollywood lifestyle in ways that could easily blur boundaries. This kind of environment could make a young artist feel indebted or even pressured to follow the mentor's lead, whether or not they were comfortable with it. This re-examination of Flavor Camp isn't just about Diddy, Usher, or Bieber. It's opened up a wider conversation about the kinds of pressures young stars face in Hollywood. These are teenagers, often pulled from normal lives and catapulted into a world filled with fame, money, and powerful influences. For many of them, the adults around them become more than just mentors. They become gatekeepers to success, which can create a sense of dependency and vulnerability. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, remember to check out this next video as well.